The approach that I'm going to take you through is focused on improving the flow of value delivery. It's about outcomes, not about outputs, and designing a fit-for-purpose approach. And this is at the team level, but we're also taking into consideration cross teams, impacts and dependencies, the value stream that the work is being done in, as well as the organization. So the first step that we begin with is understanding team context. And what we have is we have a number of adoption accelerator templates, and this is an example of one of them. So our templates have instructions on how we use the template and a bit of context on what we're trying to accomplish. And what we start with is a team and looking at the types of work and the types of attributes that they've got. So is this a team that's working on enhancements, or is this a team that supports maintenance work? Is it a shared services team? And what we do is we go through and have a mechanism that we can drag along as we pull items onto it. And we can take a look at things like the current way of working, the desired or target way of working, number of teams, dedicated team or multitasking teams. We have lots and lots of attributes that we can take a look at, as well as things that are going to be specific to that organization, things that we don't have within our template that are a bit unique to that context, to come up with what does this team focus on? What types of risks do they encounter? Where is it a new team? Is it work that they do that's new or novel, or is it just kind of routine? So we establish team context. Now, the next thing that we do is we also want to take a look at the pain points or impediments. What are the things that the team is challenged with today? So this is another one of our adoption accelerator templates. And I can show you here we've got all the people identified. And then what we do is we focus on having people put down, what is your biggest pain point? How do you think it can be removed, and why it hasn't been removed? And as I zoom in a bit here, you can see just how in a very short amount of time, we can get a lot of insight into what those pain points are, why those pain points potentially have not been removed, as well as what people feel is required to see an improvement. From there, we can do some grouping, right? We can do some affinity groupings where we're getting down to the specific items and actions. In this template, we use dot voting as one of the optional practices to be able to see where we need to focus on. So once we've established team context, once we've got some insights into those pain points, each one of these activities typically takes less than an hour. We can get on with our next step, which is to use a starting point. We call these quick starts. Based on what we know about the team and the type of work that they do, all right, team context, our pain points, we can come up with a team persona. We can see some of the attributes of the team, their frustrations, their objectives, habits, behaviors, motivations, and also take a look at value flow indicators. Is the scope of work they're typically working on small in size? Do they have few delays in the workflow? What we want to be able to do is, over time, use this as a way to focus on improvements that are really going to help with improving that flow of value delivery. So next, we will use a starting point. And for those of you that are familiar with Disciplined Agile, it is a pretty sizable knowledge base of Agile and Lean practices, as well as value stream management practices, and a lot of other wonderful content. The problem we encounter with choosing your way of working is that a lot of the teams that would be in a position to do that don't have the skill or experience to know how to pick the practices that are going to provide the biggest impact. So we've learned over the past decade of working with companies and working with hundreds of teams that have gotten the benefits of using Disciplined Agile is to provide a starting point, and we call that a quick start. And so we have two primary ways that we take a look at the context of the team, the desired outcomes, the approach they're looking to move to, And in this case, you can see this team that I'm using as an example was in where we considered a hybrid. They were mostly a predictive or a traditional approach, but they had a little bit of agile that they were using. The desired target state is to move to an agile way of working using a time box, using a sprint or an iteration. And so as I get a little bit further in this video, I'll cover what the quick start looks like and the specific practices that give a really good starting point. Another way to take a look at the practices is what we consider our little micro scenarios. So sometimes this resonates better with the team, the people in a given organization, and so we have these scenarios as far as, are you a team that's using a traditional approach? Are you a team that's got external vendors? Are you a team that's been using Scrum and you're looking to use Disciplined Agile to continue to evolve that way of working? Right? So we have lots of these scenarios as well. So some of the guidance that we have is more reference from a life cycle or an approach perspective. Are you going to use a time-boxed approach, again, similar to Scrum, or are you going to use a flow-based approach using Kanban? Are you a team that is doing maintenance work and you do more continuous delivery activities, or are you an enhancement team and you are ready to move maybe from a time-box-based approach to more of something that's a continuous delivery flow-based approach? So just to give you a little indication, what we have is we have lots of the existing frameworks as well as approaches, and we've got a lot of guidance as I just kind of zoom out a little bit from a reference perspective. So teams know that they've got options, things that they might, again, want to be able to evolve to. Using Disciplined Agile, next we're going to take a look at some of the phases of the project-based lifecycle. For the team that this example is based on is one that does enhancement work, so work that's more of like a minimum value increment or minimum business increment, or a project scope of work. And those life cycles in Disciplined Agile have phases. So we have an optional sort of another one of our accelerators that, again, in a very short period of time, we can get the team members to take a look at some of these process goals, some of these areas of focus, and see where some of the challenges that they want to be able to solve are tied into. So I'll just kind of move a little bit through these phases and now get into a bit of how we visualize the way of working, how we use a quick start, and how we show out of all of the Agile and Lean practices that are in the Disciplined Agile knowledge base, the ones that we're going to start with, as well as the ones that maybe the team is already using and they want to continue to use. So we give some indication about how to visualize the process, how to use these process goal diagrams. We have a little bit more context as far as who do we interact with, right? All the various areas to get the team in the mindset of just thinking through all of their unique attributes. And now we're going to get into designing or evolving the way of working. So again, this example, we're moving from a hybrid that is mostly predictive into a time box-based approach using, again, sprints and iterations. We've got embedded within this the DA browser, so I can go ahead and load that. And right, as we're working with the teams, we can get right into the content of the browser from a reference perspective. Now, for those, again, that are I'm going to zoom out a little bit here. For those of you that are familiar with DA, so these are the process goal diagrams. These are just containers of information that have an area of focus. We have, explore scope, which focuses on requirements. If I zoom in a little bit here, we can see we've got something like develop test strategies. We have lots of the different types of test considerations, the practices and strategies and techniques that we would use. And this is where it gets to be really interesting with our quick starts. So this is normally something we might spend a fair amount of time with the team to go through and explore a lot of this and think about, well, what practices do you want to adopt? Or, some organizations have let teams that don't have a lot of experience in these areas go through and just look at them on their own. What we have is these quick starts, and I've just got two of them that I thought I would show in this example. The first one is one that I'm going to bring focus to, which is our hybrid 1 to Agile. And another one is if we were looking at a team that was in sort of a hybrid space and they wanted to move to continuous delivery Agile, this might be a maintenance team. And you can see just from the green boxes that are here, there are obviously more up here for an enhancement team versus a team that might be doing maintenance work. And so how does a quick start work? I'm going to just grab my items and get it here lined up. And what you can see, and I'll have to just tweak this just a little. There we go. So these quick starts provide a plausible starting point. These are the things that we have found that for a team of this size and the attributes that we've identified through both their pain points and again, forming the context and the persona, this provides a starting point for them to look at. Now, this isn't all the practices that would be needed, but these are the ones that not only are, again, what we consider high impact, high benefit, but they're the ones that have the most difference between moving from a predictive or some of the hybrid approaches in the previous stuff that I showed to where the way of working would begin with. Now, this isn't a prescription. We work with a team to go through and now take a look at specifically these practices to see, do you understand this? Does this make sense? Would we want to do something different? But we have our starting point. So as I move a little bit further along, we get into the improvement backlog. So now that we've identified a change in our way of working, we need to be able to have a repeatable and efficient approach at getting a team upskilled to start putting those practices into place, to start improving their value delivery, to start improving the outcomes that they are working on. So we use an improvement backlog approach. And one of the things that makes this very actionable versus what we do find in the Disciplined Agile knowledge base is we might find a practice like I'll take a look at team norms, right? Team working agreements. Yeah, teams are going to benefit from having some agreements on how they're going to approach getting their work done. What we've got in these Miro cards, which I'll also show, we've also got this in Jira and other popular tools, is that we have a brief description of this practice. We have the roles responsible, supporting roles. We have related practices. We've got the adoption tasks. What are some of the things that would be needed to be able to put this into action? Some do's and don'ts, and a full description. So for all of the items in each one of our quick starts, what we have is we have an improvement backlog to say, are we going to be doing these practices? Are we going to be doing team norms? Right. So these are all the things that we'll then be able to put into progress and go through to make sure that we're on a good approach from an adoption perspective. Similarly, we've got this integrated into Jira. I'll go into the same one. I'll go into team norms just to show right now Miro is going out into the Jira project that this is associated with, and you can see that we have the same information all ready to go within Jira. So the next thing is we have just-in-time training. So we do have, for all of the practices that are part of these quick starts, we have these mini training modules or micro training modules so that if I were going to train a team on team norms, well, I would see that we have got here where my mouse is at, right? We've got a training package that typically is going to take somewhere around 15 minutes up to 30 minutes. We have an example walkthrough to show examples of how to write team norms. And then we have, again, we're going to use one of our adoption accelerator templates to put it into action. We also have some of our mini training modules like DA fundamentals, ways of working, and so forth. So we can show, right, an approximation of the time investment that this would take. We have some multipliers as far as, if we've got an experienced team versus maybe a less experienced and newly formed team. We have coaching canvases that we can use to establish the agreement of how we're going to be working. And then we get into the action, right? So accelerating adoption. And in this step, what we have is we have some of these micro training sessions, and then we have just-in-time training that's coupled, again, with our accelerator templates. So here are a few examples of some of the mini training sessions, what an Agile approach requires, Disciplined Agile fundamentals, using the Disciplined Agile knowledge base, the data browser, and so forth. And I'll just kind of zoom out on this because this is although a mini training, this is something that typically takes about an hour and a half, 2 hours to just go through and give a bit of grounding context and foundational information of what we're trying to do if we are moving to an Agile approach using time boxes, right? There's going to be a flow to the work. There are some things that we are going to need to see from a change management perspective. And then we go through and show, right? I can show in detail if we are moving to identifying user and technical stories, how we do that in an entire example of decomposing a feature level requirement in a brainstorming session. I can show those stories and others that are part of story mapping, the backlog, sizing of stories, right? Ordering or prioritizing the backlog and the considerations that a product owner would need to do, going through planning. So this is an end-to-end example that in a very short period of time, we're able to get everybody to understand what we're trying to do, and it's based on showing them through examples versus just talking about theory or talking about guidance. Now, the last thing that I'm going to show in this example is some of the just-in-time trainings. Let me go back to our team norms, and this is something that within, again, 15 to 30 minutes, it gives the just-in-time training for this practice of what we're trying to do and how we're about to do it. I'm going to just kind of zoom out and move through this. And then what we do is we couple that immediately with putting it into action. So here is an example of another one of our adoption accelerator templates. This is, again, one for working agreements. Each one of these has, again, the improvement backlog item, context about this practice. We've got instructions on how to use the template. And then this is a comprehensive example of a team that has used this. Now, for team norms, you can see we focus on process and behavior and working with others. And we have a very collaborative approach to being able to identify those areas that the team feels that they would benefit from having an agreement. You can see we've used dot voting again to identify out of all of these the ones that we want to focus on. And we've got an example of team norms, right? Some of the example agreements and how lightweight they can be, but how teams benefit from having these. In the template, we also have action plan notes, anything that we need to do as we, again, are going to continue to use the practice or the norms or who else we're going to share it with. We also have related practices to make sure that we've got that relationship established. And here is the blank template, right? Template ready to go for a team to use. The adoption accelerator templates, especially combined with these very small just-in-time training modules, are really what bring these practices into action in a very consistent, a very repeatable way. For those of you that have been in organizations that have already adopted Agile to some degree, what we often find is we don't see a lot of consistency. We've got coaches, scrum masters, team level coaches, as well as coaches at more and more increasing levels of experience that all have sort of different ways of doing things. So by using this approach, we're able to ensure consistency, we're able to ensure efficiency, and we're able to get a lot of collaboration going that really helps actually make this more of a persistent change. And a benefit is, again, we're focusing on how to improve the flow of our value delivery.